So, Andre, please tell us how Romania came to be on your radar as an investor, and when was that, if you still remember?
Ooh, that's a long time ago, so I hardly remember. But it was still before Credo Ventures. It was when I was still working with a fund that was called MCI Management. And it was around 2005, maybe 2006. And why it got to our radar? Well, the idea was simple. Like, Romania was a European country on track to become the EU member, and there was not much happening there in terms of startups or investments. So it felt interesting to be one of the first investors from more like western part of Europe to check it out. So I started coming, and like, I really liked the energy. There was not much happening around startups, but there were some people who did interesting things. There were some companies that were interesting. Antivirus, cybersecurity, as an example. So I fell in love with Romania and Bucharest, and I kept coming.
Did you do any investments at that point, or it happened when you got to Credo?
It happened only after we started Credo. Um, I think my first investment in a Romanian founder was in 2012. So probably like 6, 7 years after I started coming. And that was Brainient by a founder called Emigal. Um, many of the young generation don't even know the name, but he was my first. And then the second investment, I think, was UiPath.
Um, how was Romania seen, or how did you see Romania from outside? What, at that point in time, I mean, what differences and what opportunities did you see in the country as compared to the Western, or even to the region, or Western Europe?
Well, I mean, Romania felt like the Czech Republic or Poland, just a couple of years behind. So, when I started coming, there were still horizontal portals, and there was e-commerce, all right, but those were the early days. That was really Web 1.0, and everything felt like probably 4 or 5 years behind Central Europe, which means probably 8, 10 years behind Western Europe. And that was the interesting thing, that you could be at the beginning of a growing trend.
How do you see it now? What are our strengths, our weaknesses, again, compared to what's happening? You have a bird's eye view of a larger part of Europe. Well, how are we compared to other founders or other ecosystems?
I think Romania has grown a lot, and probably even caught up to the rest of Central Europe. And if I'm to think about advantages, I think you guys have a huge advantage in actually minting the first Central and Eastern European decacorn company. So the huge success story of UiPath is now, I think, your biggest advantage, because many Romanians have seen the UiPath story from very close or even from the inside, and that gives them a perspective that's very, very valuable.
You mentioned UiPath a couple of times, and I have to ask you because alongside the early birds, Credo, and you were the first foreign investors in UiPath. Please tell us a bit about the process and how did you envision at that point its evolution? What made you think we have to get on in on this? It has the potential to be something big.
Well, first of all, I never, at the beginning, I did not think it could become as big, right? Like in my wildest dreams, I hoped UiPath might become a unicorn, maybe, but that was a wild dream. I never thought of it as as a decacorn or as almost like industry leading, defining player. And like what dragged me to UiPath so strongly, I think it was the people. It was Daniel mainly, the moving force behind UiPath, but also Marius and the other first 10 people in the team that we invested in. It was their vision, their ability, their clarity of thought that I started feeling that this was special.
Now today, RPA is on everyone's mind, but at that point 10 years ago, the term wasn't,
No.
and what businesses that did RPA did.
I had to Google it. Like, I mean, it was not an established category, but when we talked to the team and when we talked to Daniel, although it was not an established category, it was actually pretty easy to understand what it does and what it's supposed to be doing. The value proposition was just so clear that I immediately got to like it and understand it. So yeah.
Were you looking at other RPA startups at that point, or they were just they were the first?
They were not the very first ones. There were others, but because we look at Central and Eastern Europe, we did not look at the other RPA vendors in the UK or in the US. For me, UiPath was the first RPA company that I've seen back then.
They were already working, from what I know, they were already working on products since 2005, I think. And it was a real struggle for them for a few years, almost 10 years, to actually become known on the market and attract foreign investors of any kind, and even foreign investors. Again, you said that the team attracted you, but I'm trying to understand, how can you, as an investor, put your faith into a team and into a product that has been struggling? When do you decide that I'm going to give them a chance?
But I see the story a little differently. They started as a company in 2005, that's true. But then they had almost 10 years of trying things. They were doing a bit of custom work, they were doing SDKs, they were actually figuring out if they can come up with a product that will work. And I think they basically got to the product shortly before we invested. So when I met Daniel, it was pretty early on, when UiPath, as we know the product now, was still fresh. So it was not a 10-year-old product that struggled in the market. It was a 10-year-old team that struggled a little bit with what exactly they would do. And once they figured it out, it was super interesting.
From your work with Romanian startup founders so far, how would you describe them? What's good and what's bad when it comes to Romanian startup founders?
I think what's good is I feel like Romanian founders, more than Polish or Czech or Hungarians, they do tend to think globally, and I like that. So I feel like the ambition is there, and which is probably due to the fact that you're, much more to the east than Poles and Czechs. Also, Romania is not a big country, so they have this ambition to go international or global. What's bad about Romanian founders? Maybe a lack of perspective. So, like the other side of this coin, because Romania is a bit sort of remote from Western Europe, or the US is far. Sometimes I feel like they lack the sort of international or global perspective.
From your perspective as an investor, what should we do for startups in order to help them grow faster?
What should we do as investors?
You as investors, as the entire ecosystem, after all. How can we help startups and startup founders grow faster?
That's a tough question, or actually the answer is tough. I cannot think of easy fixes or shortcuts. I don't believe in shortcuts much. I think fast growth comes when the right team cracks, a solution to a big problem, and they create a good product. That's when fast growth can come. So I guess where we can help is to try to guide the founders more to crack those things, build a good team, focus on a good product that solves an existing problem. No quick fixes.
Again, because you have a bird's eye view, and you see a lot of startups and a lot of founders, not just from Romania. Where do you think that we are heading as an ecosystem, the Romanian ecosystem, the Romanian startup ecosystem? What do you think that's next for us?
From where I sit, the ecosystem is growing and booming. We are here at How to Web Conference, which is even bigger than it was last year, and last year was much bigger than it was the years before. So that's a sign of the ecosystem growing and maturing. Romanian startups are thriving. There's more and more interesting stuff happening. So I am very optimistic and bullish.
Do you have other startups from Romania on your radar for investments?
Definitely. Yes, always.
And one last question. It might be a bit weird, but I would really love it if you could answer. What title would you give to a documentary about Romanian startups?
Startup.ro. I don't know. Dracula and the Unicorn. I really don't know. I'm not as creative. Danielle has great clarity of thinking. So it's, for him, when he describes things or explains things, he's very clear. He's very easy to understand. Sometimes, especially technical founders, get lost in the technical lingo, and it is hard to understand what they actually mean, especially for like an outsider. Daniel is a super fast learner. He learns super fast and on the go. That's a quality that's very, very valuable. And the third one would be Daniel is really good at hiring, quick hiring, but also quick firing. So if things don't work out with a person, he's able to fire really quickly. So, and this is especially important for like rapidly growing startups, because you need to add people really fast, but then really keep just the best ones. And I'm sure I forgot many other qualities.